Hi everyone, Shane R. Monroe here. Today we'll be cloning the SSD from one deck, in this case the OLED 1TB deck, which is my daily driver, onto another deck, the LCD 1TB unit, which I just re-imaged back to stock, so it's like it just came out of the box. Now this will not require opening either deck, nor will we need any paid software. Plus we're going to do it all on the OLED deck daily driver, so we don't need another PC. You ready? Let's do it.
Let's go into the Monroe world.
Before we get started, we'll need a few things. Obviously, to image an SSD drive inside the OLED, we're going to need an external storage device that fits that much stuff. The imaging will apply some compression, but I wouldn't expect it to be more than about 20% or so. That means for this OLED SteamDeck, I'm going to need at least a 1TB external drive, which just happens to be what I have right now. Because we're going to steal a ½ GB of storage for the cloning software, we want to make sure we don't have more than about 900 GB used on the source OLED deck. In my case, we have well over 300 GB of free space, so I'm really only going to need about 500 GB of storage for the image. Now, if I had a 512 GB storage device, I could probably use that. Better to be safe than sorry later. Just make sure you have at least a dozen gigs or so of free space before doing the image, or of course, use a bigger external drive. So now we have the storage medium, but since this could take several hours to do, we cannot rely on the SteamDeck's battery to last the whole time. We will need to have power as well. For this, we're going to either need a docking solution, which we're going to be using today, or you're going to need another way of attaching storage and power at the same time. These are pretty limited. I have the Quizlab SSD enclosure that features storage and power, and I have this oddball dongle from AliExpress that would also provide us with the storage medium and power at the same time. Any dock will do, and you can get docks or even just a hub that can do the job. Today we're going to be using the official SteamDeck dock for our efforts. That takes care of the hardware requirements, a large enough external storage medium and a means to power while we work. Now we need to prepare the storage medium to include a bootable partition containing the imaging software. Again, as we mentioned before, this will require us giving up about 500 megabytes or ½ GB of free space on the drive. Let's step back for a moment and discuss the external storage drive. Chances are you didn't buy a clean blank 1TB drive for this purpose. You just happen to have one laying around, and it probably has stuff on it just like mine does. And if you're normally a Windows user like me, that drive is formatted in NTFS. Don't worry, we're not going to make you reformat it. We are going to use a neat trick though to use this device as is without messing up any of the existing contents. Creative solutions, that's why you come to this channel, right? In order for this setup to work though, you need enough free space for the image. In my case, I need 500 or 600 gigabytes plus a ½ GB for the boot partition that we're going to make. Since I have more than 600 gigabytes free on this drive, I am good to go. Again, assess your situation and correct accordingly. Right, now let's get this party started. Go to the desktop mode of your SteamDeck and plug in your external storage. Something should pop up and offer to mount and open the drive. We shall select that. From Dolphin, you can see the contents of the drive, if any, and we're ready to make that special partition. Before you write in the comments, there are many ways to skin this cat. However, most people get uptight if I don't show you how to do it on the deck and show you how to do it on Windows. Then there are others that will complain to me about using the GUI when it's just as easy from the command line. This is just one way of doing it on deck without having to take anything out of the decks that might make it easier to visualize and do for we, the ordinary people. To do what we need to do, we'll run KDE Partition Manager. Using this, we're going to carve off 500 megabytes of a partition to boot into CloneZilla with. You'll need a sudo password for this. If you don't have one, type passwd in a console window to set one. Here on the left, you see all the drives on the system. The one that has the MMC at the beginning is your micro SD card. The next one with NVMe is the name of your internal storage, easy to see by all the partitions. And finally, the last one is your external drive. Now yours will likely appear slightly different, but the process is the same. We'll start by unmounting the drive. We can't do anything while it's mounted. You can see that I have some space used and a large block of free space. We'll do a resize move and change the free space after, not before, to 500 megabytes. Then hit OK. You can see at the end a tiny new little partition has been added. Before the next update, we can apply the pending partition creation. Let's do that now. This should be very fast. Next up, we'll select New to create the actual partition. We just reserved the space, but we haven't done anything with it yet. In this case, we must have FAT16 or FAT32 for the partition to be bootable. Nothing else here needs to be changed. We hit OK and we still have to commit it with Apply. Again, this will be a very short operation. When it's done, you'll see another new partition show up to be mounted. Let's close KDE Partition Manager and launch your browser. We'll search for CloneZilla, the tool we will use to clone. CloneZilla.org is the website, and we'll select Live CD USB. What we want to do is put CloneZilla live on a hard drive. We'll need to download the AMD 64 x86 64 zip file. Whew. From the download page, we'll choose Stable. This file has everything that we need to create that boot partition. On the next screen, make sure you choose AMD 64 and zip, not ISO, then click Download. Save the zip file to your Downloads folder and make sure the browser leaves the zip extension. Some browsers may mangle this. It's a 400-ish megabyte download, so we'll skip forward to where it's done. Once the download is complete, let's return to Dolphin File Manager and head over to our 500 megabyte partition. If for some reason it isn't mounted yet, go ahead and do that. Now, if your Dolphin doesn't look like mine, hit the little split button in the upper right. So now we have the new empty partition on the right, and on the left we'll put the download folder. Find CloneZilla Live, right-click, Extract, then Extract to. Use the file browser to find that 500 megabyte partition, then hit Extract. Now this will take a little bit, but all the files needed to boot and run CloneZilla are being copied over now. When the extraction is complete, we can leave Dolphin and shut down the SteamDeck. Now, I'm sorry, but you must plug in a keyboard. You cannot work around this, and you cannot use a Bluetooth solution, so plug that keyboard in. Once the deck is shut down, we'll need to boot into the bootloader. Hold volume down on the SteamDeck and tap the power button. Once you see the logo, you can release the volume button. Now, you may see many entries here depending on your setup. What you're looking for, though, is the Linpus Lite entry. This is the 500 megabyte partition that we set up earlier and populated with CloneZilla. If all goes well, you'll get the CloneZilla Live menu. Select the first item on the list with the Enter key. This is the VGA 800x600 entry. I'm going to leave all the loading times in so you know how long to expect each step to take. The next screen you will see is the language selection screen. Obviously, you'll choose the appropriate language, but we're doing English. And if you want to change your keyboard layout, you can do that as well. Select Start Clonezilla on the next screen. Now, things get a little bit more confusing moving forward. On the next screen, we'll select Device Image because we're working with disks and images. Since we're working with local drives, we'll select local_dev. The next part is on the bottom of the screen. It is asking you to plug in all drives necessary. Since we're using the same drive to boot Clonezilla and back up to, we can just hit enter. You're welcome. Clonezilla will enumerate all of your drives. What we're looking for in my case is the SDA name, which is my Western Digital drive with all of the free space. We can press Ctrl-C on the keyboard. It will chew for a bit with text updating on the bottom. Pay close attention. The next step is asking where to put the image, not what drive to clone. Seems backwards, but there you are. So again, we want to put the image on the large partition on my Western Digital drive, in my case named SDA1. The next option is up to you, performing an error check first. I will elect not to check the disk first. Now, there's another sketchy option here. They want to know what directory you want them to make their directory in. You can see here I have a backup of my DEX emulation folder, and that's it. I don't want it in there, so I'll simply move down to Done to choose the hard drive's root. A confirmation on the bottom is now asking you to hit enter. Go ahead and do it. More chewing away as it prepares. We are going to use beginner's mode. The rest of this video assumes that selection, so please don't deviate from that. On the Select Mode screen, select Save Disk, as we want the whole thing, not just parts of it. Now you're going to be asked to name the folder the image will go to. Don't mess with it, I beg you. Just accept the defaults or add a basic identifier at the end like I do with OLED. Let's choose some more. If you have an SD card, you're probably going to see it here. Be very careful which of these you pick. Highlight the NVMe drive, tap the spacebar to select it, then hit OK. Yes, you could at a later date image your SD card for safekeeping too. Good catch. Now you can choose a compression option. This will make your image somewhat smaller than the total space used by your SSD. So if you have about 600 gigabytes used, your image may end up being about 525 gigabytes or smaller. I recommend not using a lot and use a hard drive with the exact same or more free space than the size of the used space on the drive. Choose the bottom one. Now you're asked to elect to check the file system for errors. Again, we will decline. Next, you can choose if you want the image verified when done. In the interest of time, I will say no. A lot of questions here. Do you want the image encrypted? Let's say no to that too. Finally, what do you want to happen when all of this nonsense is done? You'll probably want to power down, especially if you're doing this overnight, but I elected to reboot after instead. Depends on whether you're there to monitor it or not. You'll finally have to press enter in answer to the text at the bottom. A list of all 9 partitions on your SSD will be shown. Select Y for yes. And here we go. Each partition will be imaged down. The biggest one is the last one. We're going to watch the smaller ones get done, and we'll speed through the last one at the end. This gives us a peek behind the curtain of the SteamDeck's hard drive. So many partitions to make up this drive, system partitions, backup partitions, and more. The speed of this whole process will depend, of course, on your storage drive and the medium that it's connected through. Now that we've hit the last partition, we have a lot of time to kill. In my case, just over 2 hours it says to back it up. We'll zoom ahead so we can see the final screens. The expected time is usually way off, so don't count on that. A lot of final stuff happens after. Kind of hypnotic to watch, actually. I'm going to leave all of this in here for educational purposes. Once all of this finishes, the action you elected, in my case reboot, will happen. I have rebooted the Steam Deck and returned to desktop mode. Now let's see the results of our labors. If we head to the Dolphin File Manager and check the external hard drive, we see that new folder. Checking the properties, we can see the image is about 511 gigabytes in size. Let's take a look behind the curtain. Inside the folder is a lot of stuff. Nothing for you to concern yourself with, but interesting all the same. Let's unmount the drive, shut down, and put our destination deck on our dock. You can see the LCD I'm going to copy the image to is freshly formatted. This is right after a re-imaging, so there is nothing here, not even a login. Let's power down now. Once again, we'll hold volume down and tap power, getting that sweet boot menu. Notice the LCD's logo is blue. Like before, Linpus Lite is what we want. This time I'll clip the boot time out and we are back to the initial Clonezilla screen. Again, choose the first option. Back to choosing your language and keyboard. Once more, we'll choose Start Clonezilla. As previously, we'll select Device Image, then Local Dev. Since our drive is already plugged in, hit Enter to move on. Verify your drive is listed and hit Control-C. This should all feel very familiar to you. Let's zoom ahead. Now they want to know where our image was stored. As you recall, we chose SDA1 before. Whatever you chose last time, choose this time. We will skip the checks once again. Now this can be confusing. You would be tempted to choose the folder with the image, but it really wants to know the root folder that has the image folders. Like we did before, we'll just move to Done. Enter to continue, zoom ahead. Beginner worked well last time, let's repeat that. This time we'll select Restore Disk. Last time we did a Save Disk. This makes sense. Finally, you get to choose the image. Since there was only one image on the drive, there's only one to choose. Now, where do we want to put this image? Again, we have an SD card in this deck, so not there, but rather the NVMe drive. Be careful, you don't want to lose that SD card. On the next screen, use the top item using the partition table from the image. You can elect to verify the image before restoring. We'll skip that. Ah yes, what would you like to do when it's done? This time, I'm going to let it ask me what to do since I'll be monitoring this throughout the day while I restore. I backed up over bedtime, which is why I gave it something specific to do. Finally, hit Enter. And yes, you're sure. Damn it, it asked again. Yes, for the love of God, yes! Now, you've seen this part all before. Each partition is written to the disk. Let's jump to the very end of the process. 1 hour, 57 minutes. Why is it faster? No compression to do during the restore. Makes sense when you think about it. Imagine if we'd added encryption as an option. Let's zoom again to the end. Funny, I expected just a menu to pop up, but you have to hit enter first. Here it is. Time to reboot. Now, what we should see is a perfect duplication of the OLED on this LCD. Remember, the SSD was out of the box and re-imaged. There's the blue logo. Holy crap, it worked. And it worked great. Now there are a few things to consider. If you named the source SteamDeck, OLED in my case, both of your decks now have the same name. You might want to rename this one. If your source deck had a smaller SSD than the new deck, use KDE Partition Manager to make sure the last big partition is taking up all the free space it can. I'm not sure if Clonezilla stretched it out for you. If you want to see a video on that, let me know in the comments below. Finally, remember to clean up that backup drive. Delete the image, unless you want to keep it as a backup, not a bad plan. And using KDE Partition Manager, delete that 500 megabyte partition that you made and resize the big partition to fill up that space. If you want to see a video on that, let me know in the comments down below. You may also notice that your SD card isn't showing up. Just eject and reinsert it and everything should be fine. Listen, if you like what we're doing here, like, sub, hit the bell. You guys know what to do. Leave a comment, share with others. If you love this channel, let's make it grow. I'm Shane R. Monroe. Thanks so much for watching. Take care. We'll see you next time.